Hi, my name's Phil Craig. I'm a writer, a TV producer, a lover of stories, and a connoisseur of scandal. And I'm on a mission to bring you the most scandalous tales ever told. So thanks for joining me here at the Scandal Mongers podcast. Hello and welcome to me, Phil Craig, and the Scandal Mongers podcast. Andrew is back. I promised it. He's delivered. Andrew and I, we are in touch a lot. I mean, we're really good old friends, as many of you know. And my chance has come to hear details from Andrew about the book that the whole world is talking about. I mean, it's extraordinary. I think we always knew this was going to be a biggie. He's worked on this for at least 3 years that I know about, but he's also been able to exploit so many great connections. So yes, Andrew on Andrew, or rather Andrew on Andrew and Fergie, in his, I hope, triumphant return to the podcast we started together 3 years ago, but I've been running myself for a year. It's great to have him back. I spoke to him yesterday, and you'll see he's on very good form. I don't want to have a long preamble today because I think the people want to get to the main course quickly. But I do love to update you on this and that. So, a great week for me in terms of my book, which I do mention from time to time. Here we are, 1945, The Reckoning. I'm excited. I'm recording this on Friday. It's VJ Day, which is called VP Day, I think, in Australia and in the Southern Hemisphere. Victory in the Pacific, victory over Japan. I'm speaking later today about my book at the London's National Army Museum, which is very prestigious, and I'm really honoured to get the chance to speak about it to what I think will be a very learned audience, lots of old soldiers, and hopefully a few friends. And I'm going to be on ABC Radio. I know a lot of people are listening and watching from Australia. I'm going to be on ABC Radio. I think probably maybe the Saturday or Sunday, so maybe the day before this goes up, this program, or maybe on the day. It's with Geraldine Doog, who is an old mate of mine from the ABC and an iconic Australian broadcaster, lovely woman. And I talked to Geraldine for about 20 minutes about the book, about Australia, about VJ Day. And it was a great conversation. And I'm sure you can find it if you want on the ABC Sound app or whatever they have there. So that's that. I did a lovely session. I haven't mentioned this guy before. My new friend, Yavar. Now, a lot of my book is about the Indian Army. And I tell the story of the Indian Army to a large extent through this man, General Timmy. That's not his Indian name. It's Kodandera Subaya Thimaya, and he's a very famous Indian general. Now, this guy, Yamas Abar, lives about 2 miles from where I'm speaking, but he was a veteran of that army. He's 104 years old, incredibly articulate, very funny, quite feisty. And not only did he serve under Timmy, he was a friend of Timmy's. They played bridge together. I mean, this is amazing. You know, why do we write and read history? It's that connection between the present and the past, isn't it? Well, I had that in person. So I've met Yavar twice, 3 times now, actually. Spoke alongside him twice. He's an amazing dude. In the 60s, he was a top filmmaker. There he is, look at that. It's like Umar Sharif, very handsome, smart, well-connected. He was a writer, a broadcaster. He knew like all the top Indian politicians, film directors. Ended up living in London, 104 years old, speaking about the war and about empire. Like a lot of Indians in my book, even though he fought for the British, he was also determined that this would be it. This would be the last war before independence, which is, of course, what happened. So that was fun. If you're in Australia, please do listen to me on Geraldine. And also, if you're in Australia, I'm still pushing, spruiking, I think is the word you'd use there, my tour. If you look in the bio of this program, there are some links. I'm in Canberra, I'm in Sydney, I'm in Perth, I'm in Melbourne, and various opportunities to come and say hello. So please do, and bring loads of friends, because I'm paranoid about nobody turning up. What else? Oh, just some of the wonderful messages from last week. Got some great comments, including from people I haven't seen on here before. Sarah Sullivan. Hi, Sarah. Are you planning to get Andrew on the podcast again to talk about his new book entitled Keep Up the Good Work? And just to let you know, I love your rambles. Oh, thank you, Sarah. That's very kind of you. Not everybody does. But yes, Andrew is indeed back on this program, if you're still with me. Chris 2277, I think Chris H, you've been on here before. I really enjoyed learning about the history of drugs Fascinating. I hadn't really thought about the teen spirit involved in some of the great turning points in history. I love the way your channel makes me think. Oh, my work here is done, Chris. Thank you. Cheryl Delange, Delange, Cheryl. Anyway, hello, Cheryl. Best one ever. Never gave this so much thought, but it's so obvious. I really enjoyed the podcast. I'm going to buy his book. Well, that's good because that's why people like to come on the show because they want to flog books, just like me. And finally, Miss Puddle. Hello, Miss Puddle. Hooray, great to hear that you'll be coming to Reddings in Hawthorne, that's a suburb of Melbourne, in October. I'm down the road in Kensington, Melbourne, but not too far away, and I hope to see you there and hearing all about your book. Oh, thank you very much, Miss Puddle. I really hope you make it and bring all of your friends and family. I think it's free. I think these events are free, or maybe they're $5. But you'll get a good hour or so of entertainment. In fact, in Melbourne, at that event in Hawthorne, I'm going to be talking to another old friend, Clare Wright, who is quite an eminent professor now and has quite a big role in Australian public life. So Clare and I will be talking. And then I'm sure we'll all go to the pub and we can talk about the book, history, Australia, whatever you like. That'd be lovely to see you there. All right, so that's me. That's my book tour. Let's get to it. Yeah, Andrew. So I got to speak to Andrew yesterday. Already, but the book is actually published today, the day I'm speaking. But there's been lots of coverage. Inevitably, the coverage covers the most salacious aspects of the book. And there are lots of that. Lots of really amazing detail about Andrew's sex life, Fergie's sex life, their affairs, his cheating, the confrontation with Harry that Andrew writes about. Apparently, one of them became physical, punches were thrown. This is being denied by certain people, but I would always trust Andrew on this stuff. I really would. I know he has amazing sources. So yeah, the more kind of headline-grabbing stuff you may already know about, and well, I got into that with Andrew, of course, because I love that stuff too. But also behind this, there's the kind of really serious constitutional and political and legal stuff about how he got away with the things he got away with, especially to do with money. And also how hard it was for Andrew to find things out, or any journalist, about royal finances and the pressures that were brought to bear on Andrew, which I think you'll find really interesting. And it does speak to a lot of the stuff that we've dealt with on this podcast, especially when Andrew was on the podcast, his obsession, rightly so, with freedom of information, how the great and the good can use the law and arcane rules to not be open about things that we, who are paying for them, really should have the right to know. So that's the build-up. I really hope you enjoy Andrew, and I'll see you briefly at the end. All the best. Thank you. Andrew, still the same mess?
Still the same mess, yes. No pullovers on today.
No, it's too hot for that.
Nothing has changed in 6 months or whatever it is.
Well, something has changed. You've become, I mean, you already were, sort of, but you've become an international sensation. This book is everywhere.
Yes, no, it's been lucky. I mean, publishers said that nothing happens in August, and they didn't want to publish a book in August. And it's evident that there is room for a book in August.
No, well, I'm very grateful to you for letting me see it because I devoured it avidly, and it touches on so many things we've talked about, but pushes the story of Andrew and Fergie so much further than I'd expected you to go. I mean, I have to congratulate you. You know, it's got that high-class smut that we all love, but really also, you know, some very serious things you're raising here about the way our country works, the way our royal family works, the way the police don't look into certain things, the diplomatic service. I mean, actually, it's a really important book, mate, and thank you for writing it.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I mean, that's what I was trying to do. I mean, it's been slightly sort of sidelined with salacious headlines, you know, as a result of the serial. But I hope, you know, the point is that there are important things going on. And indeed, a lot of the cover-up I couldn't put in for legal reasons. So I'm hoping I can add that later, that there will be more stuff.
Well, there's nothing wrong with using a little bit of salacious detail if it casts light on your characters and also draws attention to the other really serious things you're saying here. I was taken, I think I watched you on the Telegraph podcast when you said it's actually harder to write about the royals than the intelligence services. It sounds like you've had quite a struggle to get this book even finished.
Yes, absolutely, I have. I mean, I still haven't got anything out of the, as a result of FOI, of the files on Andrew, which should by law be actually in the Public Records Office, and of course would give us evidence of him taking his daughters, taking Epstein, taking Jonathan and David Rowlands on these trips, who he was asking to meet, etc. But that's one area of the cover up. The other is the Foreign Office told people not to talk to me. So quite apart from the Yorks trying to suppress this story, and actually you'll see all the way through the book, you'll remember, I mean, cases where things are put to for example, Buckingham Palace, they deny it, and then actually evidence is presented that is absolutely true. And the same with the government. People like Chris Bryant, who's now a minister, constantly complaining in this sort of embarrassed silence at Number 10, saying, we just don't go there with the royal family. So I hope, the dial has shifted and people realize that there is, as you say, a case there. I mean, the Met should have investigated him over the sex trafficking allegations. Di Davis, who was the head of royal security, was campaigning for it. And
Yes, he talked to us about it actually about a year ago. Di was
exactly.
very hot under the collar about this.
Exactly. And I mean, MPs 20 years ago were saying that Andrew should be investigated by the National Crime Agency. And I think there is a strong case for them to look at his activities now. I mean, from the stuff I've got, and I have other stuff which, I say, for legal reasons, we couldn't put in.
Well, I
I'd
want to
be
go
very
through
happy
it.
to share.
I want to go through it quite carefully with you, the whole thing, which will take a while. But before I do, I mean, did you actually get like a legal threat? Did they try and bully you away from publishing? Or
Yes,
was
I
it
mean,
more?
I had threats from Fergie's lawyers before the book came out, and rather sort of sinister uh, threats that they were watching my social media and I should be very careful. And yes, we've had several letters already from various people,
Well, fair play to you for
including from
being
Prince Harry. So,
really.
so I can't wait for that.
Oh gosh.
Bring it on, I say.
Well, I don't think you're particularly unpleasant to Harry. In fact, you show him standing up to Andrew, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing damaging in in what is a passing remark in the book. I mean, it's great. It's propelled the book into the bestseller list. So, I mean, I owe Prince Harry a great deal of thanks.
All right. Well, I also want to go back to the beginning, really, because you describe it as a tragic comedy, and there are comic elements. I mean, there are things about Andrew that are quite kind of likable, maybe even Fergie too, in the early part of their lives. But just starting with Andrew, I think you say at one point he had no barriers. He was a child who was almost feral, if a very, very wealthy royal person can be feral. Can you paint a portrait for people who haven't read the book, what his childhood was like?
Yeah, well, he's part of the second family. He's 10 years younger than his older sister. And for 5 years, in effect, he's an only child and is therefore spoilt. The Queen is much more relaxed with him than she's been with the first two. He doesn't have the pressure of being the heir to the throne. He's a very boisterous, sort of naughty little boy, and I think that appealed to the Queen. And he was allowed to do what he wanted. I mean, he was sort of sliding down corridors in Buckingham Palace, knocking things over. I mean, he would go and tie the sentries' shoelaces so they couldn't move. He put deodorant in the swimming pool of the Buckingham Palace. So they all got all bubbly. He turned the TV aerial round on Buckingham Palace just when the Queen wanted to watch horse racing. So there's always an element of a sort of hijinks, but also a sort of cruelty about it as
Yes.
well. And that sort of goes all the way through. It's about humiliating people and putting people down. And I think there's this deep sense of insecurity he has. I mean, this is why he relies on his royal status. That's the only thing that gives him any sort of presence rather than his own personality or achievements. And that's why he's hanging on at Royal Lodge. That's why he was so keen on police protection for his daughters. That's why he loves getting dressed up as in the Order of the Garter. He's hiding in some ways from this rather sad figure who describes himself as a loner. That's why he takes these pictures of sort of desolate countryside. So there's this extraordinary sort of paradox between the macho naval hero, womanizer, arrogant bully, and actually this very frightened little boy, I think, who's never grown up. And I think that may explain why he has so many teddy bears on his bed.
Good grief. Well, he sets out on a life of kind of gratification, and of course, as soon as puberty strikes, or even even before, he's extremely interested in sexual experiences with kind of anybody who will have him, and sets out on a career of philandering long before he kind of get any of that gets in the papers. So there are some lovely stories. I mean, you can see him as a lovable rogue. I love the story of when one of his early girlfriends, they thought they were being photographed by some journalist, and he said he stuck his bottom in the air and shouted, "You can kiss my royal ass." I mean,
Yes,
we
yes.
quite like our royals like that, don't we? They're a little bit kind of
Well, that's, I mean, like Fergie, a breath of fresh air. They didn't take it too serious. Well, don't appear to take it too seriously. I mean, I think he sometimes does. Yeah, great. I mean, I think that's, why they were so popular. They
Well, they
seem
were,
much
weren't they? I
more
remember
natural.
that wedding. I mean, everybody loved it. And you have the lovely story of the stag night where Diana and Fergie dress up as police women and they try to they kind of try and get into the Annabelles for the party. And it's all like pretty harmless stuff. And I think
Yeah.
the great British people, even when they did the silly "It's a Knockout," quite liked them. So when do you think the story started to go sour?
Well, actually, I think it's a knockout. It was, see, some people began to feel it wasn't very respectful to the monarchy. The whole point of been trying to create this mystique, and here people were them people just like us doing silly things. So that was a beginning, I think. And then Fergie was not really doing many public duties. I mean, she did have a job at the time, but she was also taking too many freebies, too many holidays. And then there were occasions, I mean, even before the wedding, I mean, remember the famous episode in Los Angeles in the early 80s where he turned the paint gun on the journalists
Oh yes.
when he went up to Lockerbie and said, "It's not too bad for you here, only a few of you have been killed." Um, so, he did put his foot in it, right from the very beginning. But yeah, I think it's just after that. And then, of course, stories begin to emerge of her with people like Steve Wyatt, who had very close links to Iraq during the Iran-Iraq War. And then, she's caught toe sucking or toe licking. And so that, that's when I think the Queen decides enough's enough. And she says, look, you need to separate. This is
Do you
too
think, I
embarrassing.
mean, Fergie was kind of made for Andrew, at least that's the way it seemed. They both liked silly kind of public school games. They were both very naughty. They were both had a healthy interest in sex and just like making fools of themselves. Did she have a similar background to him? Were they sort of fated from the
Yes, I mean,
cradle?
she did. She grew up in that ambience. Absolutely right. I mean, she was, I mean, there's a picture, as you've seen, the first picture in the book is of them at a polo match when they're sort of 10 or something, playing with each other. And um, they all mixed in the same circles. Fergie's mother had been at school with Diana's mother, and in fact, at the same time as my mother-in-law. So I mean, there's a little group there, and you have Andrew was sort of meant to get involved with Diana, but that sort of didn't work. But they do mix in the same circles, and it's Diana, of course, who introduces Fergie in to at the Ascot week in 1985 when the whole thing begins. But yeah, Fergie, what seems to have shaped her life is her mother running off with this Argentinian polo player when she's 13, being brought up by this father. She's always looking for, father figures, who's a bit of a rake himself. I mean, remember Ron Ferguson got caught in the Wigmore Club,
Oh, yeah.
having a massage from a nymphette called Babs. And
You couldn't make it up, could you?
no, no, it is a sort of carry-on film at times. And she was a bit of a game girl, as they say, as a chalet girl. There were concerns that some of that stuff might come out. But, she's a very damaged soul. I mean, she says that she's a people pleaser. That's why she's so generous. She's always trying to give presents. She's a good friend to people and a loyal friend and kind person in many ways. But I think she just has no stop. And she kind of, Paul Burrell talks about her going into the sweet shop and just going wild. And so there's no sense of restraint there. And I think, it's interesting. People talk when she first went through our family that, she was a very down to earth girl and actually slightly awed by it. And then quite quickly, she began to enjoy the trappings of the life. And she would dump her laundry for people to do when she stayed, and in fact, bring her laundry with her when she stayed, for example, at Highgrove. And take the freebies, realize that she could actually monetize this position by doing branding and writing or getting people to write books and putting her name to them, and being paid to open things. I mean, I think there's this extraordinary episode where the Austrian building magnate, Lugner, invites her to the opera ball in Vienna. And a little Oompa band sort of what takes her through the shopping center. She's called Your Highness, and then she opens the shopping center, and then they're marketing this pillow which has a picture of her on it, saying you too can sleep with a princess.
Ah,
So, and she puts up with all these indignities to pay for this extraordinary lifestyle. She had so many people. She had one person just to wrap presents. And there's this great story that Alan Starkey, who was one of her lovers, told me. He said when they were going through the trying to basically cut back her expenses. They went down the line. There was a little Portuguese couple at the end, and they said to Manuel, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, I go and pick up the dog poo." And then they said to the woman beside him, "And what about you?" And she said, "I help him."
I hold the bag. Oh my goodness. No, it's. I mean, I think it started this. I guess falling away of public support with their lifestyle, with the free biz, with the affairs and so on. But I mean, I think it turns a bit more sinister, doesn't it? When I know you're very good at this in the books. A lot of your book is about how they leverage their position, not just for fame, but for personal gain. And that takes us into a world of corruption, of dodgy foreign oligarchs and arms dealers, and a much darker side to the story than I think most people realize, which is why one day the police might well be involved. Was that
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
intention from the beginning to go there?
I mean, lots of stories of them being paid in jewelry and being fenced through with friendly jewelers of their friends of theirs who are jewelers. I've got a story which we didn't put in the book of a $5 million bung, basically, that was given to him by the president of Kazakhstan. Um,
Yeah, there's a lot
and
of that. I mean, the guy who bought his house over the asking price, commissions to introduce people to people, just like a rogue agent going off, leveraging his fame and his connections to
yeah,
basically
absolutely.
just make money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we do have stories of him shoehorning in the Rolands into these trade trips for them to do their own personal business. And we have him pushing the Rolands, particularly in the Middle East, who, of course, he's had to stay at Sandringham and Balmoral, who advertise themselves very openly as his business advisors and associates, and who lend him money which they never require him to pay back, or rather, one of their companies pays off. I mean, beyond this is, I say the book is about financial corruption at the heart of the royal family and the connivance of the institution itself in supporting this, because the Queen knew about this. In fact, basically stuck her head in the sand, didn't want to know. People did report this. I mean, the head of the Foreign Office told me that they just were going mad trying to get something shut down. Even Charles himself knew that being a special representative was a bad idea, but he was overruled. So, I don't know, but, really strange decisions were made. I mean, one was to make Andrew the royal who was meant to support the British fashion industry. Well, I mean, that can't think of a better way of being able to mix with models beyond setting up your own model agency. Why was that allowed to happen? He was put in charge of English National Ballet and spent his whole time sending his private secretary to the stage door to pick out girls he wanted to have a drink with. So he
It's like
was.
something from a different century, actually. I mean, a lot of it is. He's traveling the world. As you say, the diplomats are saying, well, we don't know where he is. He's gone to some nightclub. He's having girls taken to his room in Thailand. I think you say 10 a day. Sounds
Yes,
extraordinary.
makes you proud to be British.
Well, yes. But so, yeah,
Yeah,
so
no,
he's living this lifestyle. It's rather debauched. And he's disappearing off on side projects for himself, lining his own pockets. There must have been big red flashing lights. You mentioned Charles himself was worried. And he all, I guess, just came to the Queen and she said, I don't want to know.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I know Christopher Guy raised it with her, and she said, "I don't want to know." I mean, I'm amazed Philip didn't step in. I mean, there are David Wright, who was a senior ambassador to Japan, but also was very high up in trade and in trade and investment. Said we eventually stopped when he went to Barclays and used him at Davos. He said we eventually stopped inviting him because he just wanted to bring his business friends, nothing to do with even promoting Barclays. But again, a very senior diplomat said that it was very clear he had his own personal agenda. Lots of ambassadors have stories of him giving them a list of people he wanted to meet, and they sometimes they kind of didn't give him the people. Sometimes they did. And I had one consul in South Africa who was approached by the private secretary saying, can you provide some blondes for him? And the consul said, I'm a diplomat. I'm not a pimp. Um, so, it was just so brazen, the whole thing, but they knew they were protected. We can't do any parliamentary scrutiny of the royals. They're exempt from FOI. We've seen all these files that should be in the National Archives that are still closed. A lot of the foreign officers, they said, told ambassadors not to talk to me. And thank goodness a lot of them did. I think they were
Well, I was
so
going to ask you
appalled.
that. I don't know how many of them talked to you kind of off the record and how many on, but you obviously got a lot of help from the diplomats.
I did. I mean, it was very interesting. The two people I least expected to help me were the Navy and the diplomats. And I think both of them, I think one was that I think they wanted the story out and they thought this was maybe the best chance of a fair hearing. And I think they were just so appalled and so frustrated by what had gone on that they just felt that this stuff had to come out. Some of their careers were curtailed if they reported this stuff back. One of the protection officers said to me that when he said, look, I'm a little concerned about this stuff, he was told, well, at the moment you have first class flights and a good salary, but, if you would like to go back on the beat in Brixton, that can be arranged. This sort of pressure was put on everyone and everyone just, kept their heads down. Um, the computer at the Department of Trade and Industry, I had an inside contact, and I said, "Can you look up what's there?" And he said they've wiped every reference to him off it. We think Trump's been doing a pretty good job with Epstein. Well, I'm afraid the establishment here has done a pretty good job with Andrew.
That is so interesting. Well, that also leads us to Epstein. And I think what I've taken away from those chapters in your book, and you've got a lot of material on Epstein, that there's a lot more to it, and it lasted a lot longer than we've previously thought. Is that fair?
Absolutely. For both of them. I mean, what we forget is that Fergie had 18 numbers in the Black Book as opposed to 16 for Andrew. She was on the flights. She was staying there. I think one of the extraordinary things is, she said in 2010, oh God, I didn't realize he was a paedophile, even though he'd spent a year in prison by that stage. I wouldn't have anything to do with him. What an appalling man. If I'd known that, my money was coming from him, I would never have taken it. And then I talked to the doorman at the Epstein's flats, and he said, oh yeah, she kept coming to stay here till 2015. So I don't think, what she says in public and what she does in private necessarily tally. But yeah, I mean, they said it began in the 1990s, the friendship with Epstein. Well, even according to Andrew's private secretary, it began in 1991. And Steve Hoffenberg, who did the Ponzi scheme with Epstein, which is how he sort of made his money to start with, and actually took the can for it, went to prison for 18 years. Hoffenberg said it was 1991. And Andrew was such a regular visitor at the house in Manhattan. He had his own suite, the Britannia suite. So this idea that he went there and didn't notice anything untoward is complete rubbish. But we know from the Newsnight interview, we can verify all the lies that he says. I mean, he's not even a very good liar.
What was in it for Andrew? What did Andrew want from Epstein?
Well, he got three things. I mean, he got access to people he wanted to meet, particularly the lifestyle of the rich and famous, staying on islands and all that. He had, of course, Fergie's debts paid, and he had this ready supply.
Do you have any idea how much money Fergie was paid?
Well, she claimed it was £15,000, and she got people like the Mail to correct articles that said it was more. But according to one of Andrew's ex-girlfriends, it was 2 million. And I think that's probably right. I mean, Fergie doesn't get out of bed for less than 15,000.
Golly. So was it always more about money than sex, or was it both in terms of Andrew's?
I think for him, it was both. I mean, he was having his midlife crisis, on these trips. He actually broke short family holidays to actually go to the island with people. So no, he was in the sweetie shop. So for her, it was all about money, and for him, it was about both. But I think part of it was that, the money sort of was more for her than for him. That was one of the claims, is that when he went there, so-called to say goodbye over those 5 days, it was actually really to try and cage some more money off Epstein, who clearly had him by the short and curlies, because he knew he was so desperate for money.
Well, you actually at one point said the prince was a useful idiot for Epstein. which I
He
thought
was a
was
useful
interesting.
idiot for everyone. I mean, that's how the Chinese played him. That's how all the intelligence services abroad played him. I mean, every time he went to Kazakhstan or Russia and was caught in a honey trap, um, all that stuff, that compromat was collected and could be used against him. And who knows if it has been used? Maybe it's just been held back. But we have it just, we know that the FBI collected material. We know that some of it ended up with a man called Mark Dugan, who was a policeman from Palm Beach, who had been told by the investigating officer, you better have this stuff because I know the American authorities are going to lose it. And so he took it to Russia. He then, for some reason, got involved with Putin's right-hand man. But this stuff has been sitting in the FBI with the FBI since 2006. So we know there's plenty of material and compromising material there. And we know from a guy called Tim Riley, who worked for Kroll and a Cambridge academic. And he was on a tour of the Kremlin where Andrew was being shown a Fabergé egg and asked if he could have it, shades of Queen Mary. And it goes right back to his prep school days. There's a story that the prep school contemporaries told me that there was a theft of some stamps, a book of stamps. And when they did the search, they actually found it in his desk, and he'd written his own name into it. And when it was discovered, he just shrugged his shoulders, and nothing, of course, was done. And that sort of must have sent out the signal that basically he was going to be safe, and he has been until now.
Hence the title of your book, Entitled. But Fergie comes out of your book. I think it's funny. It's easy to think of her. I think there was when we talked to Tina Brown, she said, "Oh, I think of Fergie as Calamity Jane, sort of gallivanting around the world, big heart, not a very big brain." But actually, there's a slightly more darker side to Fergie. She's got her eye on the main chance, the way you tell the story, and the fact that she desperately needs cash all the time because she's always broke and she's always being chased by her creditors. And I hadn't realised how often she'd been taken to court,
Yeah.
which there's interesting stuff on that, and also the fact that she kind of, I don't know, sells access to Andrew or tries to.
Well, I mean, the famous sting operation in 2010 wasn't an isolated occurrence. I mean, the reason that the news of the world were tipped off about it was that it had been going on, and it's not her acting in isolation. She acted, of course, with Andrew. I mean, they talk 5 times a day, and even Tina Brown, makes the argument that, they didn't do this stuff in isolation. I mean, they must have worked together because otherwise, what was she offering? And I didn't talk to Mahmood, who's absolutely gone to ground, but there was one other person on that who I did interview, and it was all taped. And then she tried to sue them, saying it was all made up and all cut. And
This was the old News of the World got a sting, didn't they? Where they caught Fergie trying to sell access to Andrew. Just
yes, sorry, I'm assuming
in case
too
people
much knowledge.
don't know.
£500,000, and she took away 40,000 with her. And then I think she's so mean. She asked to said if they would pay for her parking ticket or something. Same time, and I think he offered them a kiss, threw in a kiss as well. But absolutely, she pretends to be this human Labrador. But there's a really interesting footage with a man called Michael Usher who interviewed her in Australia. And as soon as he asks her on camera about this, she absolutely, you see her, these eyes, narrowing and this very steely look. And then she walks away from the interview. And so, everyone says how manipulative she is. I mean, the reason they're still together is because her calling card is to be a member of the royal family. And while she still calls herself Duchess 30 years after they divorced, calls even some of her products the Duchess collection. While she can hobnob and with all these people and do all her cooking and laundry done by royal servants, she's very happy. And both the Queen and Prince Philip were desperate to get her out, partly to let their son have some other relationship, but also because they thought she was such a bad influence on him. And I think one of the sadnesses, if he'd been allowed to marry Koo Stark, I think that the story might have been slightly different, because Koo Stark, I don't think would have been as greedy, and I think it would have been a slightly more dignified life than the one that Fergie has done. Fergie keeps popping back. She just goes on Oprah and tells everyone, "I'm terribly sorry, that was Sarah, and this is someone different." And Americans think, "Gosh, poor victim." I mean, she's even playing victim at the moment, all the stuff, why'd you go for when you've got days and days of headlines? Why'd you then go and get a picture opportunity in Windsor park, you should be crawling under a stone and trying to keep quiet. But, kind of she enjoys this attention and she kind of wants to present herself as the victim. And there she is wearing her shoes, never complain, never explain. Well, I can tell you, I mean, we're going to be getting some letters. So, what she says in public is saying what goes on in private is very different. And I'd be delighted. I have so much stuff on her. They actually cut tens of thousands of words from the book because they said there was too much on Fergie.
How interesting. Oh my goodness. Did you find it as easy to get to her friends and former associates as to Andrew? Because I think at one point you say her friends are surprisingly loyal to her.
Yes, they are. I mean, incredibly loyal. I mean, I did, as you know, try to cooperate, get them to cooperate with me. And my wife, who you've met, knew her as a child. They were neighbors. We had a meeting. In fact, on the very day that he settled with Virginia Giffrey, where she came, they looked at baby pictures together and swapped stories. And it was all very friendly. I gave her a copy of Traitor King, which I thought would help persuade her. Perhaps not. Then suddenly someone must have said, "Don't touch the man. He's the rattlesnake," and that was the end of it. But there were friends. Funny enough, my wife had been at school with who were also school friends of hers, and I went to them and said, "Look, I'm going to do a fair portrait, and tell me stuff. I mean, I'll put all the good stuff in. I'm not out to do a hatchet job." And even then, they refused to talk to me, and that was quite early on. So yeah, I mean, she's a huge Christmas card list. She does think of people. She's very generous. I mean, there are lots of very positive things you can say about her, and it's just the sadness is that if she could rein in her expenditure and there would be some sort of figure around her who could kind of keep her on the straight and narrow, she could be a great force for good because, I mean, she's a very charismatic, charming person. Meghan Markle has tried to copy her, but Meghan Markle doesn't have that charm. I'm sure Fergie could sell rosé and jam much more effectively. Then maybe they should go into business.
Double Duchess.
The Double Duchess, yes, exactly. There we've got our brand.
It's interesting. I mean, you paint a rather poignant picture of how they live now because they're still very much together and supporting each other. He watches videos. She has lunch. They still have lots of servants to do their laundry and so on. I mean, it's obviously it's not a happy life, but it's certainly a comfortable one. Do you think that's going to continue for them?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, I think, there's a lot of stuff going on under the radar. I mean, one of the girlfriends I talked to said that she lived with him for 5 years at Royal Lodge. This is a girlfriend that's never been named. So there must be some way of getting in and out without people realizing. So I think he's probably playing golf in Portugal and going off to see Swiss billionaires as well as going for rides in Windsor Great Park. And it's not a bad retirement. He's 65. He can play golf. He's got huge grounds. He can watch planes landing, which is one of the things he likes doing. He has these air baths where he stands by the open windows.
An air bath.
Breathing in stuff. He's very into alternative medicine, like his ex-wife. He had a yogi used to come to him. He was into Pilates. He's very big into massage, and so he has masseurs come into him who help him heal, is the term, to the sound of country music. What's not to like?
What's not to like, indeed? Well, you do say though at the end that if authorities on this side, or maybe more relevantly, the other side of the Atlantic, actually get their act together, that there's still they could still face serious legal action, which might, impact on the monarchy going forward and its, openness, its finances, freedom of information, and so on. Or do you think it'll just dribble on, and there won't be a big moment of reckoning like that?
Well, I mean, the normal. I mean, the royal household always seem to do too little, too late. They just put the wagons round and sort of brazen it out, and tend to deny it. I mean, as I say, there are lots of occurrences all through the book where they deny things which are then proved to them to be true. I mean, they'll deny something happened and an email will be produced. I mean, there was a very interesting article in the Telegraph earlier this week saying that, and leaked by the palace, saying, we are looking at perhaps even taking away some of the titles for Andrew and Harry. They put the two kind of problem princes together. I think that's just floating things to see what the reaction is. But if you look at the comments below all the articles this week, I would say 90% of them are critical of the royal family, and they are saying there needs to be more transparency, particularly about financial matters. So, the fact that the ambassadors and senior naval officers were talking to me and concerned suggests that we've reached a tipping point. I don't say this, as you know, as a rabid Republican. I say this as a concerned monarchist who wants the institution to survive, but wants it to command respect and not to cover up the faults of the monarchy, whatever they do. And I think, people like what I call the rogue royals let down the rest of the family who do a jolly good job. And so I think that limb needs to be cut loose before it infects the body politic. And whether there will be more accountability is a good question, because we've had, for example, an attempt at a royal register with MPs 20 years ago. That was kicked into touch. There were calls for a National Crime Agency investigation. That went nowhere. The Met had 3 different investigations, they claim, though they will not release under FOI any details of it. And yet they saw nothing there. So I'm not wildly confident, but interesting thing which I think you saw in the BBC today, saying this is not just cemented Andrew's reputation; it's stuck him in concrete and thrown him into the river. This is the end of Andrew, and maybe they will just do that. They'll cut him loose. He won't be seen in public ever again, and everyone will forget about him. But there are always things that pop up. I mean, legal cases, depositions, no doubt. I mean, one of these ex-girlfriends was touting her story. There's always going to be stuff coming out, so they need to kind of face up to it. And I think then there would be some respect if they felt that, for example, royal wills were no longer sealed, particularly of pretty minor figures. If they felt that they didn't rush out their finances on a day when all the royal correspondents are on a tour of Japan, when they didn't try and curate the narrative by trying to suppress things. I mean, I think one of the stories in the book is how Amy Robach at ABC had the whole story of Geoffrey years before it broke, and wanted to run it. And the palace, once they heard of this, told ABC, well, that's fine, you have a choice. Do you want to ever do an interview with a member of the royal family again, or do you want to find that there hasn't been enough research done on this project?
Yeah.
And ABC killed it. So that's the sort of pressure that they were putting on. And, there's been already this week various smears against me and the book. It's salacious gossip, said Jacob Rees-Mogg, where he interviewed me and he took things out of isolation. And, all these little sycophants are going to pop up, desperate to get their gongs. So I'm ready for it, but I'm hoping that normal people will see this as pretty disgusting behaviour, and if the institution wants to survive, they need to get their act together.
Well, strong words. I see you're in fighting mood. I mean, talking of fighting, I think one of the only time that anybody's directly pushed back on one of the stories, I think, didn't Harry or his people say it's not true that we didn't have a fist fight? Just in case people don't know, one of the stories is that there was a physical confrontation between Andrew and Harry. Why do you think they've said this from Montecito, and do you believe a word of it?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I went back to my sources. We've had a legal letter from Harry, and the Collins have responded to it very robustly. I can't wait, to go to court and depose both him and Andrew. So, all I can say is thank you, Prince Harry.
So your contention is they had a row about Meghan that got physical.
Yes, there are 2 rows. There's one row in 2013, which is basically Andrew rather paternalistically saying to Harry, look, you need to get your act together. You're taking too many drugs, and you need to pull your life together. There's another in 2017 when he first meets Meghan, where he says to her, look, I don't think, she's a very suitable wife, just be careful. Exactly what William is, publicly has said to her. It's what I was picking up when I was researching Mountbatten in 2017 with other members of the royal household. So nothing new there. As we know, Harry is quick with his fists. There was a fist fight, and In fact, the fist fight was in 2013, not in 2017. 2013, and Harry now feels that we've not been very respectful to his wife, but it's the one positive bit of news that Harry's had in the last few months. Standing up for his wife and giving Andrew a punch, so that no one can claim that it's at all damaging to his
I
reputation. It's
mean,
enhanced his reputation.
the idea of the royal family, you have William and Harry. What is it? William pushed Harry into a bowl of
Dog
dog
ball,
food,
yeah,
and now they're
and ripped
punching.
off his necklace.
I mean, it's like the Beverly Hillbillies, isn't it? But with nicer furniture to throw at the
Yes,
relatives. Somebody
exactly.
gets drunk and has a punch up. I mean, that's kind of like
Yeah.
historically the royals have been a bit like that, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a great idea. I can see a sort of cartoon series which depicts them as like the Beverly
Well, do
Hillbillies.
you ever watch that thing, The Windsors, that Channel 4
Oh,
make?
yes,
I mean,
yes.
what it's
Very close.
extraordinary. The portrayal of Andrew with his silly practical jokes and his dodgy deals with businessmen from somewhere out east, and then Fergie always kind of like trying to get a freebie. It's so accurate, isn't it, from your book at least?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it is. I mean, and actually, there was a series done called The Ambassadors with David Mitchell, which was based on an embassy in Central Asia, and there's one episode with a visit from Prince Mark, played by Tom Hollander. And I know that the scriptwriters had 60 pages of material from ambassadors, so
Oh,
giving
really?
them material for this. So yeah, I mean the stuff is out there. I mean, but yeah, the Windsors is pretty true to form. So yeah, so that, Harry has put in his writs. I mean, of course, he's highly litigious, as we know. But I'm not too worried, and neither is Collins. The lawyers gave the letter a 2 out of 10.
Okay, well, I do admire your courage. For people who don't know, you spent a long time on the Mountbattens trying to get information and put a lot of your money up, a lot. And just sort of, I know I outstay my welcome because you're a busy man.
Not at
But
all. No, no, it's a pleasure.
I
Always
wanted to
talk
show
to you.
you this. I met with Chris Moore
Oh,
last
great.
week
Oh,
in
terrific.
Ireland. Your name came up, and of course, all your work at Mountbatten, which he's building on with his new book about King Cora, and talking of dodgy members of the royal family with deep dark secrets.
Yeah, important. That's an important book,
No.
and again, a very respected commentator. And that's, this stuff is all coming out, eventually.
Well, that leads me to my final question, really, which is that you've said many times you're a concerned monarchist. You believe in the institution. You're not a Republican, but you don't like the rogue royals. You think they need reining in, more scrutiny, and so forth. But the longer this goes on with Mountbatten, with Andrew, and everything you found out about what he was doing around the world, you're not beginning to just a little bit change your mind on that?
No, I mean, I'm not. I mean, maybe it's blind faith. But I think once if they deal with the problems, and there's no problem with, William and Catherine, what Edward and Anne do, I think is terrific. There's a real role for them. I think, they're spread thinly because they're high expectations. I think one of the interesting things that emerged the other day was actually having royal patronage doesn't necessarily help a charity with fundraising. And in fact, one of the revelations, certainly I found, was that actually it had a negative impact. So actually, people were only too happy for them not to be involved. Fergie, had a reputation because of her reputation. A lot of charities didn't want to be associated with her and quietly sort of pushed her out. And that was true of Andrew, English National Ballet. I think quite a revealing story there, where he just hogged the royal box to entertain his friends and one of his mistresses, who was a yoga instructor. And didn't let the donors in, and then they found him toxic. So they were absolutely delighted when he lost his patronage. So I think if they start looking at these things again, they may realize that they may be great for opening certain places and visiting sick children, but they don't necessarily add a lot to the whole thing. And I know Republic, have long argued, long documents making the case that actually they don't bring in huge sums of money, that would be there anyway. Windsor Castle isn't going to be turned into a Trust House 40, or maybe it should be. But it's these things are there and people visit them, but having the royals now wouldn't make much difference. So I think there's more of a debate, and as the younger generation become, I think, less interested. I mean, they're going to go at irrelevance, really. People will they'll be on the sidelines.
Okay, well, that's so interesting. I think you've done us all a great service with this book. I know it's been an awful lot of work. I know a little bit about some of the behind the scenes stuff that you've told me about. I don't think I know much of it, really. I think you've been brave. I'm glad your publishers are standing by you. Good luck with it. And yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
number one status awaits if you, I mean, it's not officially published yet, but you've probably got a
Well, it comes out
sense.
on Thursday. In fact, we are number one on Amazon.
Wow.
We're number one on new releases in the States, and that's on the basis of a self-published book. I mean, my US publisher S&S cancelled my contract a few weeks ago and basically threw me under the bus.
Oh, really? Was that
And
because they were getting legal threats?
I don't know, but so I suddenly had to do my own self-publishing. So a very difficult situation. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
you'll see it's quite complicated. It's not even a hardback up because of the various rules.
How extraordinary. Well, that's very brave of you, and I look forward to your triumphant American book tour.
Right. Well, I hope so, and I hope your book's going well.
It's going, well, I'd say critically acclaimed, maybe not the bestseller lists yet. You never
Yeah.
know.
Well, who knows? You need Harry to put in a word for you.
Yes, that's what I need. And more stories about hotels in Thailand and dodgy dealings in nightclubs. That's what I need. Oh, great to
Exactly.
talk to you, mate. Lovely to have you
Nice,
back.
nice to talk to you too.
And well done. Big well done.
Well, thank you, and I
Francis
wish,
sends her love.
thank you, and I wish the podcast all the best. I mean, it seems
Oh,
like you've got something really good going there.
that's very kind of you, mate. All the best to you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Well, it was so lovely seeing Andrew again in such great form, and I wish him every success. He deserves it. He's had, as many of you will know, he's had a very tough few years. He's written some books that were highly acclaimed, but he got into this long-running war, really, over the papers to do with Lord Mountbatten. You'll find out much more about that if you watch our very first program on this podcast. And he put hundreds of thousands of pounds of his own money into this struggle to get access to documents. Over the years, he's got, I think, most of it back through the generosity of the public. And also, I think some of his lawyers did some deals for him. But yeah, that was a big strain. And if anybody deserves success and the book sales that I'm sure he's going to have, it's Andrew. So good luck to him. And yeah, that was so interesting. And hopefully he'll be back again on the podcast. I think he rather enjoyed himself, don't you? Yeah, it was good having the rapport with him again that we always enjoyed, mostly involving me teasing him about his jumpers and his absolute inability to operate a computer. It's just, I don't know, he'd be happier in the age of the quill pen without Andrew. Um, so, what's coming up? Well, next, I'm still doing my one show every 2 week rhythm. And the next one, I think, will be another royal program. But for many months, I've had lots of comments, people asking, what about the European royals, Phil? There's some amazing stories of European royal families, including some very scandalous and rather colourful ones. And I could not find the right guest. But I've been put in touch by Andrew, actually, with Brittany from Royal News Network. I think that's the name of their channel. I mean, it's a very big channel. It's got like, I don't know, 200,000 subscribers. And it's an American woman. I think her full name is Brittany Barger. I'm not sure. I think so. She just tends to call herself Brittany. And she has an absolute encyclopedic knowledge of European royals. She reminds me a little bit like Carolyn. Carolyn Harris, who's come on from Canada a few times. A bit like her, I think. And then that's going to be very entertaining. So we're finding out all about the scandalous secrets of European royals. She may even have a few things to say about the Brits as well. And then coming soon, I had to sign an NDA. First time in 3 years of podcasting, I had to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. So I can't really talk about this book, but I can say the name of the author, and that is Valentine Lowe. Now, Valentine Lowe, you may remember, was one of our very early guests. I think he's been on the show 3 times. And Valentine really broke the story of Meghan and her relations with her staff, and how that was a part of the great unraveling and falling out allegations that she was an extremely difficult boss. And a lot of people, he worked for the Times as a world correspondent, and he had terrific contacts. And he broke that story. And I think his new work, I don't think it's about that, but it's bound to be interesting. And he's coming on the show very soon. And I think that could be a bit of a scoop. So yeah, lots of other things bubbling in the areas of history, all things I find fascinating. and a few more slightly offbeat ones, like, I don't know, the recent Absinthe or History on Drugs, because I find that kind of stuff interesting. All right, thank you for joining me. It was just like old times, wasn't it? You, me, Andrew. I do love this podcast. And thank you for all of you who allow me to keep doing it by clicking and subscribing and liking and commenting, and maybe even occasionally buying my book. Okay, take care. Thank you. Bye. This has been a Podcast World production. If you want to contact me, write to team@podcastworld.org, placing Scandalmongers in the heading, or you can reach out via the social media links in the show's bio. And if you've enjoyed this episode and you want to support the show, please consider taking a few seconds to hit the donate button found just below this video. Many thanks, and see you next week.